and I'm joined by Luna as well. This webinar is recorded, as you would have just got from the notification. You will also see on the screen Sean, our Auslan interpreter, a very talented man, and I'm trying to make him blush, but he's pretty sturdy, made of sturdy stuff. And we've also got captioning with Michelle Halliday here as well, so thank you, Michelle. If you'd like to use the captions, then down the bottom in the right hand corner, there is a button that says CC and live transcript. And if you click on that, that should get you the transcript. Let's give it a few more minutes. And then we'll get started. Look, I think we can kick off, and anyone who joins a bit later can catch up. So welcome to our chat with Luna Ryback, exploring the importance of hearing queer voices at the Disability Royal Commission. We'll be exploring this issue for about 20 minutes and we'll leave time for questions. So all up half an hour. Luna, thanks so much for being here. I'd first of all like to acknowledge the custodians of the land in which we meet. For me, that's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'd like to acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. Acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Before I kick off our discussion with Luna, I'll be outlining what the Disability Royal Commission is and a bit about our service. We'll then get into just a discussion of why it's so important that the LGBTIQA+ community is included in the conversation of disability policy in Australia's future. Our voices matter. Luna is a proud representative today, and what they say might resonate with you or it might not. And that's why it's important for you to think about if you have something to say too. So a little bit context about the Royal Commission. Sometimes people with a disability have been hurt, treated badly, refused help or taken advantage of. This is wrong, and as a lot of you will know, the Royal Commission has been set up to look at this. The Royal Commission started in 2019 and will go until 2023. And it's looking at issues like employment, education, the NDIS, the justice system, healthcare, where people live, people work, people study, all settings and contexts for people with disability. And more broadly, it's about how to promote a more inclusive society. There are public hearings on some of these topics, but you can contribute about these issues at any time. The Royal Commission is looking for people to make submissions and speak with them to get a better idea of the issues that affect the community. This includes queer people as a priority group. Many issues that they're looking at touch upon the intersection of LGBTIQ and disability identities, which we'll speak about with Luna. And at Your Story, we're a free legal service. We're independent of the Royal Commission, and we can answer your questions about sharing your story, like how you can do it, how you can keep your story private, whether you can name people or organisations, whether it's an issue if you've signed a legal document which says you can't talk about what happened, and whether you're sharing your story will affect your work. We can provide legal support so you can safely and confidently share your story. We'll give contact details at the end if you'd like to make an appointment. Our service is delivered through community-controlled Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander legal services and legal aid commissions in each state and territory. So we have Aboriginal legal service lawyers as part of the Your Story team who are ready to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with disability. And now enough from me. So for people who missed the very start, I'm a lawyer at Your Story with a disability myself as well. And I'll introduce Luna. So Luna uses pronouns they, she, is a young queer non-binary trans woman with disability living on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Although Luna has lived with disabilities throughout their life, her disabilities were only recognised in adulthood. Luna is intent on raising awareness about the inequalities experienced across intersections, from diagnosis to support by people living with disability. Luna is interested in the processes that LGBTQIA+ and people with disability engage in to self-advocate for adequate and affirming healthcare. She enjoys participating in roundtables and discussion and hopes to push for and support others to push for positive change. She's a current member of the Women with Disabilities Australia Youth Advisory Group and participated in the development process of the 2020 SWASH Lesbian, Bisexual and Queer Women's Health Report and the Trans Hub platform, a digital information and resource platform for trans and gender diverse people in New South Wales. Having previously studied psychology, they're hoping to further their education through a research degree. She plans to continue engaging with activism and advocacy through future research. So welcome, Luna.
Thank you. Welcome to you too. It's awesome to be here with you.
And I thought I'd start off by asking how you came to know about the Royal Commission.
Yeah, so a whole lot of my understanding about the Disability Royal Commission has really come from my work being directly involved with Your Story workshops and through my involvement as a Women with Disability Australia's Youth Advisory Group member. Although I notice it now, it was being discussed in articles, and I kind of have seen that now, but I didn't really notice it beforehand. I didn't really see that it was a thing, and it wasn't until I was in these organizations that are, I guess, more involved than the average person would be, that I even actually began to really understand what the Disability Royal Commission is.
And I guess coming from that, when you first heard of it, did you feel like it was relevant to you?
When I first heard about it, I didn't really think it was for me. I somehow didn't think that my disabilities were even serious enough. I went through thinking that oh, maybe, it's for the companies that are involved in the NDIS process, or maybe the service providers. I also thought it was maybe just for a specific group of disabled people who are accessing specific supports like NDIS. I didn't think that it was a very broad discussion that was being had. It was actually a bit of a shock, really, to find out that it was not only was my disability relevant and important to the DRC, but that my self-diagnosis was also important. That there wasn't going to be someone at the check-in for my application to the Disability Royal Commission saying, where's your paperwork? No one's going to do that. The Disability Royal Commission wants to hear my experiences and what my story is and the suggestions and ideas that I have. It's actually been weirdly surprising and pleasant to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to hear that you felt like you didn't have to prove yourself to the Royal Commission for your voice to be thought of as valid.
Yeah, so anything about my disability is something that is important and something that the Disability Royal Commission wants to hear. Yeah. And having that kind of realization, I suddenly had all these things that I wanted to share. It was really validating to know that I could talk about whatever I wanted around my disability. I could talk about what I thought needed to change or what could be done better even. And how, my experiences were shaped by the current structures in our society as well.
Let's talk a bit about one of the focuses of this webinar, which is the relevance of the Royal Commission to the LGBTIQA+ community. Can you give us some thoughts on the relationship between queer rights and disability rights?
I think, yeah. There's a lot of work that can be done together in both of these communities. The intersectionality is intense. It's really strong, and in some instances, not all, but it's pretty strong. Yeah.
And could you explain what you mean by intersection in case there's someone out there who's unsure?
Yeah, so intersectionality is when you have one experience of the world that also interacts with another. So, for example, being disabled and being queer are two different experiences on their own, but they also have this point of connection where they overlap and intersect.
And have you had to think about sharing your story with the Royal Commission?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that.
Yeah, sorry.
This overlap can actually be a bit of a point of unique strengths and ideas. However, like a person having these intersections, especially minority-based intersections, it can also lead to unexpected roadblocks or difficulties that a person with the privilege of having intersections that society more idealizes might not have to face.
Yeah. And sorry for cutting you off there. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah. So just I was just asking as well, have you thought about sharing your story with the Royal Commission?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a lot of thoughts about that. I'm kind of working through what I want to share on a few things, actually. I've actually shared a little bit already as well. I did some facilitation work for a group that was doing a group submission. It was all anonymized within the group, but what was being discussed was actually going to then be put into a report and shared with the Disability Royal Commission. And being a part of that as a facilitator, I didn't really have much of a chance to share within the group discussion, but I was able to share my thoughts to the people that were putting that information all together for the report.
So Luna, this is a question I'll ask so the audience gets an idea of why do you think your voice is important, and more broadly, whether you have any thoughts on why queer voices of all kinds are important for the Royal Commission?
Yeah, that's it's actually a really good question. I quite like that. So my voice is important because, you know, I'm just one side of many experiences. There are so many out there, so many experiences with disability that, you know, the more voices we have that, and the more voices that are shared, the more information we can have within this Royal Disability Commission, and like all of that leads to a richer outcome for us, and that what we can get out of it. So I might say something about my education, for example. And for education, you know, someone else might say something about their experience with diagnosis. And those two things are really important. Like, they're two different stories from two different people, I would imagine. Like, I don't think it'd be pretty crazy if there was like, it'd be very it'd be interesting if there was two like extremely similar stories that were being presented by two different people, but I think that would speak volumes as well. And you know, all of these stories that people bring forward are very interesting and important stories that need to be shared.
Yeah.
You can't really have a full picture with just a few voices, and you need lots of people to come forward for that. Like, everyone's voice is just as important as everyone else's, and I think that's like really worth like considering.
And what's so important about LGBTI perspectives, do you think?
Yeah, I think LGBTQIA plus people have a really interesting and unique perspective. It adds so much value when that intersection is discussed. You know, as a trans person, I understand what it's like to have the governments not so easily support my needs, and to struggle to get the supports that I need. This has been especially so when I haven't been able to jump through the certain hoops. And having to forego money, time, and energy into something that others take for granted can really suck. I've had a lot of amazing people support me, and I think that's worth mentioning too. But like, they can take some time to find and be connected with. Because just going through the medical system as a disabled trans person, I've got to get through a lot of things twice over. So I've had to experience, you know, hesitations or doubts in multiple ways, and how I navigate that on both fronts kind of makes it more prominent to me. when I go to access therapists of any kind, I have to think about, well, first of all, do they understand what my disability is? And will they be affirming to me rather than medicalizing and pathologizing me? Or will they even hear me as a person? Or, like, will they see my disability? And then will I have to also think, will they see my queerness and who I am? Or will they just kind of see me as some sort of strange person who's living this lifestyle choice, which it really isn't. It's not that at all. And like, having to look at both of those things at the same time really limits your pool of people. You can go to a specialist for disability, but they might not be LGBTQIA plus supporting. They might be like really bad at supporting you, and just not a great experience. And you really struggle. You can really struggle to find who you can talk to. And that can get harder the more you move away from cities. Unless you know a doctor or you know someone and who knows a doctor, and you're well connected, that can be an amazingly challenging thing. It means that disabled people might not have access to supports for themselves, or that they aren't able to leave cities even, and therefore have to pay for higher costs of housing, or even just transport, what's familiar and accessible. Even in cities, that can be a challenge. And then you throw in being queer into that as well. And it can almost become really just impossible in some instances.
Yeah. And is there anything you feel like we as a society could do?
Yeah, I think a key part to both queer and disabled experiences, discussions, especially within the Disability Royal Commission, comes back to, and this is my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that it comes back to education. I think we really struggle in part because there's a lot of misinformation and a lack of knowledge. And as a result, a lot of stereotyping and even sometimes a fear of talking to someone or being around someone, and having both of those experiences, that kind of exponentially gets more and more difficult. And that's before you even throw in other intersections. It becomes much more difficult to navigate in a system that's built for ideally a specific group of people. And when it really shouldn't, it should be built for everyone. But it really doesn't feel like it currently is. And that's something I think that's important to talk about, that we need to talk more about.
Yeah. And you're covering a lot of areas that the Royal Commission are really interested in hearing, and they're interested in promoting a more inclusive society more broadly. And you've raised a lot of points related to that. So a big question, but what would you like to see from the Royal Commission in the end?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'd love to see real change towards equality. So, not having to being given fair amounts of choices or supports, and not having to fight for them at a ridiculous level. While you also have to be a professional paperwork person. I don't want people to fall between the cracks between cracks. It's another thing to have to put down that unpaid time, constantly, just to get support so that you can function and feel like you can be a member of society in a way that doesn't feel like you're always getting behind, or that you're always just behind others. And I want there to be more of a justice-based system where we can kind of work towards leveling the field, making sure that people aren't just kind of thrown into the current cracks in society. We can have all these great supports, but if it's too hard to reach them and gain access to them, then people are going to miss out and be held back by that.
Yeah. And so the Royal Commission's recommendations might feel like they're at a very high level of policy, but do you feel like there are personal implications for what could come out of it as well?
Yeah, there are changes I'd like to see come out of the Disability Royal Commission around accessibility of diagnosis across the board. Late diagnosis shouldn't be a thing, or if it is, it should be so rare that it's wow, we need we actually struggle to do research on late diagnosis. Whereas I think, if you do that now, it's so common. Like my late diagnosis should not have happened. I saw professionals and I was seen by professionals who should have picked up my disabilities when I was a child, but they didn't. And that's kind of, it sucks. For so many people, because you end up having to mourn this loss of time where you weren't really being supported and where you weren't being given the tools to succeed in life. And you shouldn't have to burn out to receive supports. Like you shouldn't have to reach the lowest low to feel like you have nowhere left to go. And it's even like then have a chance of getting those supports, which they should be there earlier to help improve your life, and rather than like getting the supports when you reach that crisis point.
Mm. And I'm sure things that you said have resonated with people listening today. If you could, do you have a key message for anybody listening who's thinking about going to the Royal Commission? And if you have anything to say to them?
Yeah, so your story is important. And you don't have to share a lot of words. You can put in a few words like school bad, and even just saying that says something that's important. You can also make multiple submissions, like I'm kind of planning on doing, and there any submission, it can be pages and pages long. You can do whatever you like in your discussion or presentation around your experiences and your story and what you want to see change through the Disability Royal Commission. Like your voice isn't it's so important. And yeah, it is largely unpaid labor, but it's the labor that will pay back in dividends. It'll pay back so much to yourself and others later in life and future generations, that it's worth more than anything anyone could pay right now.
Yeah. I mean, thank you, Luna. I think that's a really lovely message and a good way of wrapping up where I'm asking you questions. If people have a think about if they have any questions for Luna about their experiences or questions about your story, you can pop it in the chat. I'm just going to very briefly provide some information. So if you go to the Q&A function down the bottom, you can write questions that will go to the panelists. And the first and most common way to contribute is to make a submission. It can be a quick email, a quick phone call, fill out an online form or something longer. There's no set way or set length. It can be audio, video, artwork in any language, including on Auslan. Anyone can make a submission. Another option is private sessions, which involves a person telling their story face-to-face, either in person or virtually to a commissioner. And it's a very private and confidential way to share your story with the Royal Commission. Documents and records from private sessions remain confidential for 99 years. And with submissions as well, there are ways that you can protect your story. You can also give evidence at a hearing. The Commission runs hearings on different topics throughout the year and invite people to speak as a witness. Not everyone gets a chance to do this, but it's a great opportunity if you can. And yeah, no, I'm happy to take questions. Just indicate whether it's for me or for Luna. I know Luna had some questions for me. If people don't want to pipe up, I'll just have a check in the chat first of all. So I can see a couple of questions coming through about what support can your story provide LGBTIQA plus people. We've all been through training on being inclusive, and we have multiple queer lawyers as well. So as an employee, I've always felt very welcome, and I hope the same courtesy has been extended to all our clients as well. We've been given a welcome here pack from ACON, which just indicates that that we're LGBTI friendly as well. And of course, we can provide support, whether it's advice on how people can go to the Royal Commission safely and confidently, or we can also provide other assistance like referrals if you have other issues. And yeah, there are lots of different ways for you to contribute, and LGBTIQA+ people can receive your story support just like everyone else. And then I see another question about making a submission about an issue if the public hearing about that issue has already happened. And yeah, so absolutely, there have definitely been, there've been, I think, 20 public hearings now, but any of the issues raised there can be talked about at any time. So it ends in September 2023. They'll probably stop taking submissions, maybe 6 months before that, I don't know. But there's plenty of opportunity to go at the moment, and you can make your submission in any form at any time up until then. Now I can see another question that I'll hand to Luna, and knowing that we don't have too much time left, but I think it's a nice question for us. It's, what's your vision for an inclusive society for LGBTIQ people with disability?
I think, yeah, as I was kind of going into a little bit, I think it comes back to education and like not only that, but like inclusivity and acceptance. The power that having like knowledge out there and understanding and whatnot can have is just so far reaching. And I guess, if I was thinking about a vision for an inclusive society, it would really start with kind of getting more information out there to more people. And, just having a world where it's like not something that's negatively judged upon at all. Like where we don't have to, like even as a queer person, like coming out is such a, like, why is it that only queer people come out and whatnot? And like, I don't know, that's just weird to me. Like, I think there's a lot of change that could happen, and that would be great. And seeing that world is so, like, I hope that we get there. And I hope that I get to see it. Yeah. Well, I don't hope, I know that we'll get there eventually. And I hope that I get to see it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the questions in the chat for now, which is good timing. There is, but if you'd like to ask more questions about sharing your story, then you can email us at yourstorydisability@legalaid.nsw.gov.au. There's a quick question for Luna before we go, if you don't mind at all. Luna, what ideas do you have about how we can better get the word out there about the Disability Royal Commission to the LGBTIQA+ community?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. Really liking these questions. So I think it just starts with communication, like just mentioning it casually to your friends, be they disabled or not, or even queer or not. But especially like getting that information out to your queer friends, I think it'll just spread so naturally. It's one thing to have groups like WIDA or organizations like Your Story kind of bring this information out, but it's another thing for us as queer people and disabled people to like bring this to our communities and just talk about it, and point in the right direction for information. If there's any confusion, like you don't have to know everything, but getting that conversation started is the most important thing, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, Luna, and a good way to end it for today. But that doesn't mean that, oh, sorry to falsely wrap it up there. I'm just saying one last one. I know that there are some fears and hesitations around queer folk telling stories to the Royal Commission. What would you like our community to know to encourage them to come forth? I might answer that one quickly, just because I think it's important to know from the Your Story perspective, there are ways that you can get protections. There are ways that you can share your story anonymously and confidentially. And you can request an appointment with one of our lawyers where you can talk about that specifically. And there are ways that you can do it more publicly as well. I know fear of privacy being breached is a big issue for queer people and for people with disability. So that'll be my main message, is that there are protections that we can discuss as well. And then before we do wrap up, Luna, do you have any brief thoughts on what you'd like our community to know to encourage people to come forth?
Yeah, that it's, I mean, I think I kind of said this a few times maybe, but like our story is so important. Like we have such a unique perspective, and like I love how supportive our community like almost always is. It's so supportive of disabled people, and you go to events, and I don't think I've been to like just going to a queer event and having like an Auslan interpreter there, or like any sort of supports or considerations, like, oh, this is wheelchair accessible, and like any amount of that going in, like I can see how supportive and understanding our community is, and how much we try to make that society that we want to see. And I think we've got a lot of ideas on that, and they're really good, and we need to share them. And just, yeah, that's pretty much what I've got to say about that.
And not a question, but there is someone who just wanted to say thank you to you, Luna, and I wanted to say thank you on behalf of Your Story. Thanks for everyone who's attended. I hope you found it very interesting. I'm sure you found it as, I hope you found it as interesting as I did to hear from Luna about their insights. So thanks to our interpreters and captioner as well. Appreciate your time, and wishing you all a lovely day.